Hello and welcome to our podcast episode number 49, An Emotional Journey of Redemption and Faith in 1850s Appalachia. I am Timothy and I am here with my dear friend Thomas. Tonight we are going to discuss a film called The Last Sin Eater. There will be spoilers. The Last Sin Eater is a 2007 American film directed by Michael Landon Jr., based on the novel of Am, the same name by Francine Rivers. Set in 1850s Appalachia, it tells the story of 10-year-old Cody who seeks solace from her family's blame for a past tragedy and discovers Christianity through conversations with a preacher. However, this newfound faith leads to confrontation as the community faces its dark secret. So, Tom, what do you think about The Last Sin Eater?
Well, Tim, I found it to be a rather interesting take on faith and redemption in a time when religion was very much intertwined with every aspect of life. The film did a good job of portraying the isolation of this small Appalachian community and how their beliefs helped shape their worldview. However, I must say that I found some aspects of the storytelling to be a bit contrived, especially when it came to Keddy's conversion to Christianity. It seemed like her character underwent quite a dramatic transformation in a very short period of time. But overall, I think it was an engaging and gripping film that managed to evoke strong emotions from the audience.
Now, Tom, you know how much I dislike films with a heavy religious undertone. And while I can appreciate the historical accuracy of this portrayal of life in 1850s Appalachia, I found myself struggling to connect with the characters and their beliefs. It felt like the film was trying too hard to make a statement about faith rather than telling an engaging story. Furthermore, I thought that some of the performances were quite wooden and lacked depth. While it's important for a film like this to have a sense of authenticity in its setting and characters, I feel like it could have been achieved without sacrificing so much. In terms of emotional resonance and character development, however, I will admit that the cinematography was quite beautiful and captured the rugged beauty of the Appalachian Mountains quite well. But ultimately, this wasn't enough to save the film for me.
I see where you're coming from, Tim, but I think it's important to remember that this film is targeted towards a specific audience who might find solace in its themes of redemption and faith. As for the performances, while they may not have been Oscar-worthy, they did serve their purpose within the context of the story being told. The film was clearly going for an authentic feel, and I think it succeeded in that respect. Now, moving on to the plot of The Last Sin Eater, let's discuss some key moments that stood out to me. Firstly, there's Keddy's encounter with the Sin Eater, who is portrayed as a superstitious figure who consumes food from the deceased in order to absolve them of their sin. This scene serves as a catalyst for Keddy's spiritual journey as she begins to question this practice and starts to seek answers from the preacher who has come to their village. Another pivotal moment is when Keddy experiences her baptism, which represents both her acceptance of Christianity and her reconciliation with her family. This scene is particularly powerful because it shows how deeply rooted these beliefs were in this small community and how transformative they could be for an individual. Lastly, I want to touch upon the climax of the film, which reveals the dark secret that the village was founded on. It's a heart-wrenching twist that highlights both the destructive power of guilt and shame as well as the redemptive power of forgiveness and acceptance. Overall, I found The Last Sin Eater to be an emotionally charged film with a powerful message about faith and redemption in times of hardship.
Yeah, well, Tom, while I can appreciate your perspective on the film's themes and messages, I still maintain that it wasn't executed well. Enough for my taste. As for the plot points you mentioned, yes, they are all significant moments, but they felt too contrived and unrealistic to me. For example, Cotty's encounter with the Sin Eater seemed more like a device to further a spiritual journey rather than an organic part of the story. Additionally, while I understand that baptism holds great symbolic weight in Christianity, it felt like Caddy's transformation from skeptic to devout believer happened a bit too quickly and without much struggle or internal conflict. This made it difficult for me to connect emotionally with her character and her journey. Moreover, the revelation of the village's dark secret at the end of the film felt like an afterthought rather than an integral part of the narrative. It seemed like it was added solely to provide a shock value or emotional payoff without properly establishing its significance within the context of the story. In conclusion, while I can see why some viewers might find value in The Last Sin Eater's themes of faith and redemption, I personally found it to be a poorly executed film that sacrificed character development and narrative coherence for its religious message.
Well, Tim, I can see where you're coming from, but as someone who has always been fascinated by stories of faith, redemption in times of adversity, I found this film to be quite engaging despite its flaws. Moving on to some interesting trivia about The Last Sin Eater, did you know that the film was actually based on a novel written by Francine Rivers, which she originally self-published? It wasn't until after the book gained popularity in Christian circles that it caught the attention of mainstream publishers and eventually led to the production of this film adaptation. Another interesting fact is that Michael Landon Jr., who directed The Last Sin Eater, is actually the son of the famous actor Michael Landon, known for his roles in shows like Bonanza and Little House on the Prairie. So it's quite fitting that he would direct a film set in such a historical and rural setting as Appalachia during the 1850s. Lastly, I want to point out the beautiful score composed by John Debney, which perfectly complements the emotional journey of Cady and her family throughout the film. The use of haunting melodies and stirring strings adds an extra layer of depth to what is already a powerful story about faith, redemption, and forgiveness in times of hardship.
Motown, I must say, that's some interesting trivia about The Last Sin Eater. It's always fascinating to learn about the origins of a film or book, especially when it comes from such humble beginnings like Francine Rivers' self-published novel. As for Michael Landon Jr., I suppose his connection to Little House on the Prairie makes sense given the setting and time period of this film. And John Debney's score definitely added an emotional weight to certain scenes, even if it didn't quite make up for some of the narrative shortcomings, in my opinion. In any case, thank you for sharing those insights with our viewers. Now let's move on to some questions from our lovely audience. Question: what did you think about the performances in The Last Sin Eater? Did any actors stand out to you?
Well, Tim, while I agree that some of the performances may have been a bit wooden at times, I thought that the actress who played Cady, Anna Sophia Robb, did an admirable job considering her age and inexperience. Her portrayal of Cady's transformation from a confused and grieving child to a devout believer was quite convincing and emotionally resonant. I also thought that the actor who played the preacher, Henry Thomas, brought a sense of warmth and authenticity to his character, which helped ground the film in its religious theme. As for other standout performances, I would say that the supporting cast, including Carrie Snodgrass as Cady's grandmother and Molly Price as her mother, all did well in their respective roles. Overall, while the acting may not have been award-winning material, it served its purpose within the context of the story being told and helped convey the emotional weight of the narrative effectively.
Well, Tom, I must say that's an interesting perspective. While I still stand by my opinion about the film as a whole, it's always enlightening to hear different interpretations and insights from others. Now, let's move on to discuss some of the differences between the novel The Last Sin Eater by Francine Rivers and its film adaptation directed by Michael Landon Jr. Firstly, it's worth noting that both mediums have their own strengths and limitations when it comes to storytelling. As a novelist, Francine Rivers had the luxury of delving deep into Katie's thoughts and emotions without having to rely on visuals or dialogue alone. This allowed for a more intimate connection between the reader and the character. On the other hand, as a filmmaker, Michael Landon Jr. had to condense the story into 2 hours while also ensuring that the visual aspects of the film supported its themes effectively. One major difference between the novel and the movie is how Katie's conversion to Christianity is portrayed. In the book, her journey takes much longer, with several key events occurring which strengthen her faith significantly. For example, she experiences visions and dreams that validate her newfound beliefs and convictions. However, in the film adaptation, these events are either downplayed or omitted altogether, resulting in a much more compressed timeline for Katie's spiritual transformation. Another notable difference is how the village's dark secret is revealed in both mediums. In the novel, it becomes apparent through a series of revelations and flashbacks that span over several generations, while also exploring how this secret has shaped the lives of various characters within the community. On the other hand, in the movie, it is more of a twist reveal during an intense confrontation between Caddy and her grandmother, which adds to the dramatic tension, but may not be as emotionally impactful as its novel counterpart. Lastly, one can argue that some characters are fleshed out better in either medium due to limitations imposed by time constraints or storytelling methods used by each format. For instance, in the film version, Henry Tom portrayal of the preacher adds depth and complexity to his character, while also highlighting how influential he was on Katie's journey towards faith. However, this comes at the expense of other characters such as Katie's father, who is given less screen time, which diminishes his role in the story significantly compared to the novel, where he plays a much larger part. In conclusion, while both the novel and film adaptation of The Last Sin Eater share similar themes and narrative arcs, they differ greatly when it comes down to character development and pacing. Each medium has its own strengths that allow for deeper exploration into certain aspects of the story, while sacrificing others due to limitations imposed by their respective formats.
That's a fascinating analysis, Tim. I must admit that after watching the film, I was curious about how it compared to its source material. It seems like there were some significant changes made during the adaptation process which impacted both character development and narrative structure. Now let's talk about some of the actors who brought these characters to life on screen. As we mentioned earlier, Anna Sophia Robb played Caddy, the young girl at the heart of this story. She did an admirable job considering her age and inexperience, capturing both the vulnerability and strength of character that Caddy goes through during her journey. Her portrayal was particularly powerful in scenes where she grapples with guilt over her grandmother's death or experiences moments of deep spiritual connection. Carrie Snodgrass played Caddy's grandmother, a pivotal figure in the story who is also struggling with guilt and the burden of secrets from her past. Snodgrass brought depth and emotion to her role, making it easy for the audience to connect with her character on an emotional level. Her performance was particularly moving during scenes where she confesses her sins to Caddy or confronts her own demons about the village's dark past. Henry Thomas played the preacher who comes into town and becomes instrumental in helping Caddy find solace and understanding. He brought a sense of warmth and authenticity to his character, which helped ground the film in its religious themes. His performance was particularly effective during scenes where he engages with Katie about her spiritual doubts or shares personal stories from his own life that resonate with her experiences. The rest of the supporting cast also did a solid job in bringing their characters to life on screen. Molly Price played Caddy's mother, who is dealing with grief and the weight of secrets from her own past. Her performance was subtle yet effective in conveying her character's complex emotional state throughout the film. David DeVos portrayed Caddy's father, a man struggling to maintain his family amidst personal tragedy and societal expectations. His performance added an extra layer of depth to the story by showcasing how different characters were affected by the same events in unique ways. Lastly, we have to mention Stephen McCarthy, who played the Sin Eater, a character shrouded in mystery and superstition. His performance was chilling and effectively conveyed the menace that this figure represented within the community. In conclusion, while I can see where Tim is coming from with his criticisms of the last Sin Eater's pacing and character development, I personally found the performances by the cast to be engaging and emotionally resonant. Each actor brought their own unique nuances to their roles, which helped elevate the story beyond its flaws.
Well, Tom, while we might have differing opinions on the film itself, I think it's important to acknowledge some of its artistic influences. For example, the use of stark landscapes and dreary weather mirrors the bleak mood that permeates throughout much of The Last Sin Eater. This is intentional as it reflects both Katie's internal turmoil. The overall tone of the story being told. Additionally, the film's reliance on visual storytelling can be seen as an homage to classic silent films or even earlier works by directors like Charles Dickens, who often used similar techniques in their stories set during this time period. Furthermore, themes such as faith and redemption have been explored extensively throughout history and various forms of art, including literature or even music. While these influences might not be immediately apparent to everyone watching the film, they do contribute towards creating an atmosphere that helps evoke certain emotions and ideas associated with its subject matter.
That's a fascinating perspective, Tim. As someone who appreciates art in all its forms, it's interesting to see how different mediums can influence each other over time. Moving on from the artistic influences of The Last Sin Eater, let's discuss some of the technical aspects that contributed towards creating its unique visual style and atmosphere. For instance, the filmmakers made use of natural lighting during production, which adds to the authenticity of the setting while also highlighting the harsh realities faced by those living in rural America during this time period. Additionally, their choice of using handheld cameras for certain scenes adds a sense of immediacy and intimacy between the audience and the characters on screen. This technique was quite popularized by filmmakers such as Emir Kusturica and Lars von Trier, who often employed it in their films set during similar historical periods or dealing with similarly themed narratives. In terms of production design, The Last Sin Eater does an excellent job replicating the look and feel of 19th century Appalachia, from the simple yet functional dwellings inhabited by the characters to the rustic interiors filled with everyday objects from that era. Everything seems meticulously researched and recreated for maximum impact on screen. This attention to detail further helps immerse viewers into this world where superstition and religion play such significant roles in shaping people's lives and beliefs. Lastly, we cannot discuss the technical aspects of The Last Sin Eater without mentioning its haunting score, composed by John Debney, which seamlessly blends traditional hymns with more modern orchestral arrangements to create an emotional core that underpins much of what transpires throughout the film. In conclusion, while there might be some who find fault with certain aspects of The Last Sin Eater's narrative or character development, it's hard to deny its artistic merits and technical achievements both within its own medium and when viewed through a broader lens that encompasses other forms of artistic expression throughout history. As such, I believe this film serves as an important reminder about how stories can transcend their mediums by tapping into universal themes and emotions that resonate with audiences across generations and cultures alike.
Well, Tom, as much as I'd love to continue discussing the technical aspects of this film or its artistic influences, I think it would be prudent for us to wrap things up by sharing our final thoughts on The Last Sin Eater. While I still maintain my initial criticisms regarding pacing and character development, I do appreciate some of the themes explored in this film, such as faith redemption and overcoming guilt. It's clear that the creators put a lot of effort into crafting an atmosphere that captures both the bleakness and hopefulness of its time period. However, ultimately, I found the execution lacking, which prevented me from fully engaging with this story on an emotional level.
Thank you for sharing your thoughts, Tom. While it's unfortunate we couldn't see eye to eye on every aspect of The Last Sin Eater, I appreciate your willingness to discuss this film with an open mind and a critical eye. For me personally, despite some of its flaws, the themes explored in this film resonated deeply with me on both an emotional and spiritual level. The performances by the cast were engaging enough for me to overlook any shortcomings in character development or pacing. Additionally, I found myself drawn into the story due to its unique visual style and atmosphere created by the production design team. In closing, I'd like to encourage our viewers out there to check out The Last Sin Eater if they haven't already. We hope that you enjoyed our discussion on this film and would love to hear your thoughts in the comments section below. Remember to subscribe to our channel for more film discussions like this one. Thanks for watching, and don't forget, like, comment, and subscribe